Good evening. We are back to the Spirit's book on chapter 4. Let me share the book here. Chapter 4, we finished studying last week, incarnations in different worlds, where we talk about the process of incarnation in different worlds, and we reinforced the idea that we reincarnate many times in the same world because of our needs to be around those that our loved ones and those that we have issues with to be able to deal with our trials and our expiations. That's why we're here. So now we start a new item on this chapter, still chapter 4, progressive transmigration. Philip, do the honors, please.
189. Does a spirit enjoy all of its faculties from its creation? No. As in the case of human beings, spirits experience infancy. At birth, they only have an instinctive existence and scarcely possess any cognizance of themselves or their actions. Their intelligence develops gradually.
Okay, so we discussed this before, we studied this before, right? We start as a spiritual principle. We go through the different kingdoms, mineral, vegetable, animal kingdom. And as we are evolving, we develop the instincts, the autonomic functions, and our primitive notions of intelligence, if we want to call that, when you reach the higher animal stages, the mammals. And then you become an individual spirit, that what we call when the spirit first incarnate. And but when you are in your first incarnations, you barely have anything of intelligence or of free will. You have basically what you bring from the animal kingdom, instincts. So the intelligence develops, the free will develops, and we learn as we go. But the ability to learn as human beings and carry this with our progress is what differentiates us from the animals, right? Because the animals, they learn, but they can learn. Dogs, cats, and some mammals can learn, but that's it, right? They learn instinctively and act instinctively on their learning. We rationalize, we use our intelligence to act, and we learn from our previous actions, and we build our progress, moral and intellectual, based on our understanding of the world around us and our relationships. Okay, but developed. So we are, when in the very beginning, when we are primitive, we are in the infancy of spirits. Nowadays, of course, we've made already a long way. Sometimes it may look like we haven't, but we have. And we heard from the spirits that we are closer to God than we are from our creation as a spiritual principle. So we could say that we travel more than half of the way to perfection. But what that means in terms of time and in terms of numbers, we're not going to venture there. Okay. Questions, comments? Okay. Next one, Philip.
I have a comment to make.
All right, Paco, go ahead.
Okay. When we say intelligent existence, cognizance of themselves or their actions, the way people here, human beings at this point in this plane, some of us are not really aware of our own actions, so they still Am I making sense? So we're still kind of evolving because that awareness of cognizance of actions is still, that's still in progress, even though we are kind of far ahead of the midpoint. Is that correct?
Yes, but what the spirits are saying here, in the beginning, we scarcely possess any cognizance of ourselves and of our actions.
Yeah,
Nowadays, we do have, but doesn't mean that we are not perfect spirits. So we still
exactly. So we're still lacking. Okay. Great.
Yeah. Why do you think psychiatrists and psychologists make money? We need
business.
to learn more about ourselves.
They're in business for a reason. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good answer, by the way.
Okay.
All right.
190. What is the state of the soul at its first incarnation? Equivalent to human infancy. Its intelligence is only beginning to bloom. It may be said to be testing out life.
Okay, a little more of the same. We discussed that. So our first incarnation, can we call ourselves animals? In the sense of the animal kingdom, almost, right? Because we just left, we barely have any ability to reason, to use our free will and to use our intelligence. But it's there already. The seeds are there for us to use it. So we are starting to use it. And again, as we said many times, the more you know, the more responsible you are. So the responsibility for their actions in this first incarnation is almost none, right? Like animals do not have a karma. They don't have consequence of their actions for their future. When we are in the primitive state, we barely have any responsibility. Again, we make, as we always say, we create karma when we make a mistake knowing of what we are doing. When we don't know what we are doing, we are making errors in the learning process, we don't create karmas. Okay? That's important here. All right. Next one, it's still more of the same. You can see that I crossed a word that we shouldn't be used and I replaced with another one, right?
So I continue?
Yeah.
191. Are the souls of primitive people in a state of infancy? Relative infancy, but they have already experienced some development because they have passions. A, are passions a sign of development? Development, yes, but not of perfection. They are a sign of activity and an awareness of the self. In the embryonic state of the soul, intelligence and vitality exist only as seeds. A spirit goes through successive phases similar to those of the corporal life. It develops slowly from an embryo to infancy and reaches adulthood through a succession of periods destined to reach perfection. The main difference between these two lives is that spirits are not subject to weakness or deterioration. The life of a spirit, while having a beginning, has no end. It takes a vast span of time, according to our perception of it, in passing from infancy to mature development, and this progression is completed by passing through various worlds. The spirit life is a sequence of corporal lives, each providing an opportunity for progress. These lives are made up of days, each an opportunity to acquire experience and knowledge. However, just as a person may have unproductive days, a spirit may have a futile corporal existence because it has failed to properly leverage it.
Okay. So the first part here, the spirits bring a notion of when we are primitive in our first incarnations, we already experience some development because we have passions. And passions, it's a sign of activity and awareness of the self. That's when, you know, you look at a baby and you can make an analogy with a baby. The baby, when starts to act on their impulses, and when they start being aware of their own self, right? It is said that the baby thinks that the world exists only on what they see. What they cannot see no longer exists for them up to a certain very young age, right? So you can think of a primitive, us in the primitive phase as a baby with some passions, some things we like or dislike, acting on our passion and becoming more aware of ourselves, right? That's the very primitive state. And the best we can do, we can have in terms of comparison is to a child, right? And then Kardec also the spirits say that passions are a sign of development, but not of perfection. And we know that our passions still get the best of us until today, right? Sometimes. And we unfortunately sometimes act on our passions, choosing the wrong path. So Kardec here makes a comment comparing the evolution of a spirit as a child that develops from an embryo to infancy and then reaches adulthood through a series of days and years. And the comparison is just, it's not a complete comparison because, of course, the physical body dies and the spirit never dies, is eternal, has no end. But he compares our evolution as if our lives were like days, right? Each day an opportunity to acquire experience and knowledge. We know we have an infinite number of lives until we reach perfection. We already had many. We still have many more. And as we progress, each life is an opportunity to learn and to progress. And some lives we use better than others, but we are always progressing. Even if we have a futile corporeal existence, as Kardec says here, we are still learning not to repeat it in a future incarnation, and we'll see this Kardec or the spirits talking about this a little later on this item. Okay. Questions, comments here? Yeah, it's a lot more of the same that we're talking about here, the primitive development, right? Now we move we move a little bit further from the primitives. You're on mute, Philip.
By leading a perfect life now, could we skip all the degrees and become a pure spirit without passing through the intermediate levels? No, because what human beings believe to be perfection is actually quite far from it. Some qualities exist that are unknown to them, and in the current state, they have no means of comprehending them. They may be as perfect as humanly possible on earth, but still far from absolute perfection. A child, no matter how bright or talented it may be, must go through youth to reach adulthood, and a patient must recuperate before making a complete recovery. Additionally, a spirit must advance both intellectually and morally. If it has advanced in only one of these directions, it must match this development in the other to reach the top of the ladder. The more a person advances in the present life, the shorter and less painful his or her future trials will be in later existences. Can people assure themselves a future existence with less bitterness than their present life? Yes, of course. They can shorten the length and difficulties of the road. Only the person who neglects advancement remains stagnant.
Okay, so now we're talking about the progress of a spirit. And the question that Kardec asks is a common question for those that are new to Spiritism. If we can reach perfection in one incarnation, reason and logic tells us that we can't, because first, define perfection, right? We cannot define perfection. We don't really know. When we discuss a perfect spirit, we have a very basic understanding of what a perfect spirit is, right? When we talk about the next phase of evolution, as we evolve from imperfect spirit to more evolved spirit, when we talk about charity becoming a part of who we are and not a part of an effort we make to progress, do we really understand what does it mean to be charitable 24/7? We have some examples, like Mother Teresa and the famous story of her running to save that, to grab that man that was dying in the pile of garbage, right? That the journalist follows her, and after what he sees, what she does with the man that was dying, and she put the man in her lap, and the man dies, and it's all, in the middle of the garbage, you can imagine, in India. And the journalist tells her, I couldn't do this even for $1 million. And she tells him, neither could I, only for love. This is pure charity, pure love in action. Are we able to do that? I don't think most of us are, and I don't think we fully understand what this is. So how can we understand perfect spirits? So if we cannot understand perfect spirits, we don't have the target, because we don't know what the target is. We cannot reach the perfection in one life. That it's absolutely logic. We just have to look at ourselves. We all know our own imperfections, so we can look at them and think if we can evolve in terms of dealing with some of them, yes, but with all of them, we just have to Be Perfect in the Gospel According to Spiritism to either get disillusioned with ourselves and with Spiritism, or to use it as an incentive to make an effort to progress. So also the progress is both morally and intellectually. And even if we cannot see the target morally, we cannot see the target intellectually also, right? Because we are all here, specialists in one area or another, our professions, our interests, but how many areas we know nothing about? You think about science, philosophy, technologic areas, all other advances that we have. Just look at your cell phone and tell me how it works, right? 99% of us have no idea. We know it works, right? So there is a lot to learn intellectually. Again, we don't need to go through each profession. We discussed that before, because as we evolve intellectually and morally, we embrace more and more knowledge without having to go through the experience, okay? But there is a long road ahead. So again, we can be, as the Spirit say, we can be as perfect as humanly possible on earth. but that's far from absolute perfection. You know, like a child can be a genius at 8, but it's still a child. It continues to be a child, right? It has to grow, has to develop. It may be a genius in one area, but the other areas, it's not. It's not a full genius, right? So we need to evolve. And again, the evolution on the moral and intellectual has to be balanced. And that's very important also. We cannot evolve only on one side. The intellectual side is much more easy. Like Elmo likes to say, it's only accumulating knowledge, right? You don't have to discard anything. The moral evolution is discarding, is eliminating imperfection. So that's much harder. But even if someone evolves morally a lot during one incarnation, if it doesn't evolve intellectually, you have to come to a new incarnation to learn to evolve intellectually, to be challenged intellectually. Of course, we normally see some people very humble, like Chico Xavier, for instance. He looked like he didn't have a lot of intellectual abilities, and but we know that he had, and he was just too humble to admit that he had any. I remember his famous interview in the TV that was just republished, the 50 years of the famous Pinga Fogo in 1971, when they asked him about the books Evolution in Two Worlds and Mechanisms of Mediumship. How could he write such difficult books? And he answered, yes, they are really difficult. I don't understand what I wrote. So that's typical. I'm sure he understood much more than he let it go, but you know, it's one. Humility is a sign of moral evolution, and for sure he was much more morally evolved than we are, right? And then on the item A, we can, of course, we can make a better future if we have a better life. If we work on our moral and intellectual improvement, we are going to have a better and easier life ahead for us. If we, again, we all can always choose difficult trials in order to help us move faster, but as the Spirit says, we can shorten the length and difficulties of the road by making an effort. Okay. Questions, comments here? Nothing? Okay. So
193. Can individuals fall to a lower point than the one they have already reached in new lives? In terms of social position, yes. As a spirit, no.
Very simple and direct question. Again, we are always evolving. The law is of progress. We never regress. So, as I like to say, this is our best version of ourselves. If we start going back in our previous existences, we're going to find worse versions of ourselves only. So that's always progress. But in terms of course, in terms of social position, you know, you can one incarnation be rich and then the other one be poor. You can in one incarnation be the boss of everyone, and then the other incarnation be the last employee of the firm, the lowest one, because this is all learning and all we are building on our ability to learn with resignation, patience, and knowledge. So it's clear here that in social position we're going to go through different ones, but as a spirit we are always evolving. Okay.
194. Can the soul of a good person inhabit the body of a scoundrel when reincarnated? No, because a spirit cannot regress. Can the soul of a wicked person become that of a good one? Yes, if he or she repents, it is a reward. Spirit advancement is always progressive and never regressive. They gradually rise in the spirit hierarchy and never regress from the point at which they have arrived. Throughout their different corporal lives, they may be downgraded as human beings, but not as spirits. Therefore, the soul of a person who has reached the peak of material power may, in a subsequent life, be a modest artisan, and vice versa, because positions among individuals are frequently the inverse of the elevation of their morality. Herod was a king, and Jesus was a carpenter.
So again, very clear and straight from the spirits. A spirit cannot regress. So a good person cannot inhabit a body of a scoundrel when reincarnated. You can, it's not the body that makes the person, but the spirit that makes the person. So you can, if you are a good person, if you are an evolved spirit, you can incarnate in a body of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you are not going to act on all your strength and all your ability to impose yourself over others with your physical presence. And the same way, you can be incarnated as a weak 100 pounds person and be a very angry, very aggressive, and very nasty, right? So the physical body has nothing to do with what the spirit that inhabits it. Everything is in the spirit, the moral and intellectual evolution. But again, there's the part A, when can a wicked person become a good one? Of course, we evolve. So if we lead a very disruptive life, a very evil life, and we change, we act on our imperfections, we make an effort, we change, it's possible to come on a new incarnation already as a redeemed spirit, having to readjust and having to face the consequence of their actions. But you can change to a better position, and you can even jump in terms of progress if you make a good effort maybe during the incarnation when you are in the spiritual world. We see the evolution of André Luiz in the spiritual world, right? From a spirit that, from an incarnation that he was not a bad person, but had no interest in spiritual life, and had some regretful actions that caused him to spend some time in the lower zones, and how much he had progressed in the spiritual world. Of course, this all is put to test in a new reincarnation, but you can see the evolution in the spiritual world. So again, it's a combination of sincere repentance and an effort to improve. The explanation by Kardec goes back to the different social positions. And again, we have to remember that the society in the 1800s, especially in Europe, was very strict. You didn't become a noble person if you were a common, you didn't become royalty or a duke or anything, with very few exceptions. You were born a peasant, you die a peasant. You were born an artisan, you die an artisan. The change in social classes, something that in this country started earlier than in Europe. You already see by the end of the 19th century, people here becoming rich and becoming elite before Europe. Europe still, well into the 20th century, had the difference of classes still prevailing. But on the other hand, the concept of reincarnation in this country was put aside by Kardec when he tried to disseminate Spiritism here in the 1900s, because of the refusal of acceptance that you could be born a slave in a future incarnation if you were a slave owner, right? That was the what Kardec tells in the Spiritist Review. One of the main reasons that reincarnation was never forced upon here in the United States in the 19th century, because of the problems with slaves, that in Europe was no longer a problem in terms, right? Not really, but in terms. So the concept of reincarnation was easier to be learned in Europe than it was here in this country. Okay. Okay. Questions, comments? No, everyone is very quiet today. Okay.
John.
Yes, Carol.
A general question. I was thinking about a condition of an individual who incarnates, who rapidly grows very quickly, ages beyond what we would normally think to be so, the way it would go. Would that generally be categorized as just a challenge or perhaps a trial?
What do you mean, ages in terms physically? Ages?
Yeah, like ages becomes like an old man at 7, or shows signs of being already mature in the physical sense. Like it fast forwards a person, you know, what, maybe 10 times more quickly than regular growth. And it's a little bit quirky, but I don't know, that just came to mind, whether that would be just a challenge or perhaps, you know, a mission.
Well, everything that we face is either a trial or a atonement, right? So it may be a consequence, experiences that you have to go through for different reasons. So first, let's divide here. The physical body getting aged earlier, it could be a sign of a disease or a sign of some problems with development. That for sure is a trial or an atonement, right? The spirit showing signs of maturity before its age is a sign of moral evolution, right? So you think of Chico Xavier, right? When he received his first book, he was barely 20, right? And he was already receiving this beautiful work and was already doing the work by himself, and with all the characteristics of an evolved spirit, right? So you could tell that he was older in terms than his peers in terms of evolvement, in terms of moral and intellectual moral involvement. But so I don't know exactly which side you were trying to focus on your question, but if it's a premature age on the physical body, definitely should be a trial or an atonement, an experience that you have to go through for some reason. Maybe you abused your physical beauty in a previous incarnation, so you come with a new incarnation without having the possibility of have any physical beauty, because you are going to age quickly, or because you are going to not be attractive or something like that, is a consequence, right? Or like we see in the Missionaries of the Light, the woman that asks for her physical body to be average, so she wouldn't call the attention of the world and could do her work that she was supposed to do in peace, right? Because extreme beauty or extreme ugliness calls the attention and distracts the person, right? Because you face the challenges of both sides. And when you are an average person, you don't call the attention of it, right? But I don't know if I answered more or less what you wanted.
No, it's very interesting. I might try to maybe read up a little bit more about it. And I don't know, it was just sort of came through my my mind. So I don't know if it's relevant even, but thank you for answering it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me ask Elmo if he understood differently what you asked. Yeah.
No, I think like you understood it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
Oh,
let's work
thank
on
you,
that
Olu.
for the.
Thank you, John.
Let's work on that question for the Q&A, Carol. See if we can discuss it on the Q&A.
Okay, good enough.
All right. Anyone else? Okay.
195.
Yeah.
Could the ability to improve in a future existence result in some people leading immoral lives when they know that they are always able to make amends at some point in time? Such a premise indicates no real belief in anything, and the idea of eternal punishment could not affect such individuals anyway, because their reason would reject it and lead to skepticism in everything. If only reason guided people, there would not be so many skeptics. An imperfect spirit might reason this way during physical life, but once freed from the shackles of the material body, they have a dramatically different way of thinking. They realize that they made a great error, and this causes them to adopt an opposite sense in their next existence. This is how progress is accomplished and why some are more advanced than others. Some people have already had the experiences that others have yet to go through, acquiring them little by little, and each spirit is responsible for their own progress or delaying it indefinitely. Those who hold an inferior position want to change it as soon as possible. In addition, those who know that the trials and tribulations of the present life are the consequences of their own imperfections seek any means possible to ensure a new existence that is less painful. This attitude will much more effectively keep them away from the bad path than the threat of eternal fire, which they do not believe in any way.
Yeah, this is also a very common classic question, right? If I know that the law is of progress, that I'm going to progress anyway, I don't really need to make much of an effort, right? It's going to happen. And, you know, what the spirits tells us is that, yeah, we don't need to make any effort if we don't want to, but there will be consequences. Because, you know, if we don't progress much here, at some point in our future, we are going to look back and we are going to regret. We are going to look at our path and we are going to, because again, knowledge is very important here. We know that we are supposed to make an effort to progress. We know that the law is of progress and that by making an effort, we are guaranteeing a better future for ourselves. If we, with all this knowledge, we continue to be lazy and we continue to make very little effort in changing ourselves, we are going to face consequences, and the consequences are more difficult incarnations. Because, you know, if our effort is not enough, we can, let's say, all those spirits that are leaving Earth to incarnate in a primitive, more primitive world, right? Imagine yourself, we are all comfortable with our comforts of the physical life today. And imagine our next incarnation, we are born, you know, in 30,000 years ago, when we were nomads, hunting and trying to survive from one place to another, trying to avoid the dangers and with very little or no comforts. Would you like to face that? Well, that's what the spirits that are refusing to evolve with the planet are going to have to face, right? Like all the exiles from Capella that incarnated on Earth 10,000 years ago in Egypt and in Asia. Can you imagine those that coming from a world like ours, incarnating 10,000 years ago in very barbaric situation? So did the spirit regress? No, it didn't. It still has the knowledge, it still has the moral, but you end up in a place that is much more difficult to deal with. So that's the dangers of not making an effort, right? We have, again, talking about us here, we have a comfortable life. Let's say we don't make an effort, but we're not evil per se, so we don't need to be kicked out of this planet, let's say. But we're going to come into a new incarnation where everything is going to be hard to come by. We are going to have to make an effort to survive, to feed ourselves, to provide for ourselves and for loved ones. A difficult incarnation. Why? Because when we had the opportunity, we didn't take advantage of the opportunity because we had knowledge of the necessity. So it's a question that is always, tempted to reflect on it, because if the law is of progress, then why should I make more than an effort, or shouldn't I just make the basic effort just to get by? We can, but that's going to create challenges in the future for us. Okay. I remember you asking this, Renato, many years ago.
Yeah, many times.
Did you change your mind on that or not yet?
I mean, there are certain things that you just, as you said, you get tired, right? Gotta move on.
Looking from my side, I guarantee that you changed a lot. You may not see it, but we do.
Thank you.
But it's a valid reflection. I think it's a question worth talking about and discussing, right? Anyone else? Questions, comments? Okay, 196.
Since spirits can only improve by experiencing the tribulations of physical existence, does physical life equate to a type of sieve or filter through which the beings of the spirit world must pass to reach perfection? Precisely. They improve themselves through these trials by avoiding wrongdoing and practicing the good. It is only through many successive incarnations or purifications, and after a longer or shorter lapse of time, that they succeed in reaching their goal in accordance with their efforts. Does the body influence the spirit to improve, or does the spirit influence the body? Your spirit is everything, and your body is nothing but a decaying envelope. That is all. There is a material comparison of the purification of the soul in the juice of the vine. It contains the liquid called the spirit, or alcohol, but it is weakened by numerous foreign elements that change its nature. It requires several distillations to reach absolute purity, each of which remove a fraction of its impurities. The still is the body into which it must enter for purification, and the foreign elements are the perispirit, which gradually purifies itself as the spirit approaches perfection.
Okay. So Kardec asked the question here is that we can only improve by experience the tribulations of physical existence and compares to a filter, right? And the Spirit said, yes, we can use that comparison. We improve ourselves through the trials by practicing the good and avoiding wrongdoing, right? And it's only through many incarnations. What is a question that is very common here is, so can we evolve in the spiritual world? And that's something that is important for us to come back here and discuss, because we evolve in the spiritual world in terms of learning, intellectual involvement, and even in terms of morally evolved. But to put in practice, to make sure that this learning and progress became a part of us, it's only through a physical incarnation, because in the physical incarnation, you face the challenges and the tests that will make sure that you have acquired and made part of yourself of the evolvement. So you can learn to be patient in the spiritual world, right? But it's only coming here and trying your patience in different aspects of the physical life that you can prove that it became a part of who you are, right? I was reading a story today of a guy in the airport waiting for his plane, and that, you know, it's the example of those that have acquired patience, right? He asked for a soft drink. It took 20 minutes to arrive because there was only one lady serving. He never complained. Then he asked for his bill. It took another 20 minutes for the bill to arrive. And the guy that is narrating was sitting next to him in the other table. He never complained. When he left, the bill was like $10, and he gave $10 tip. And when he was leaving, the guy that was narrating said, I told him, wow, you know, you really showed some patience there. And he said, well, poor lady, she's by herself, and these are difficult times, so she deserves a little credit. And he said, this is the example of patience, right? And I was thinking about our study here. Well, we always use patience, right? You either have it or you don't. It's one of the things that you don't lose your patience. You either have or you don't. And this example is someone that has, right? You see, if he doesn't lose his patience waiting for 20 minutes in the airport to drink one soft drink, he's not going to lose his patience in many other situations, right? So this is the learning. Again, it's easier in the spiritual world when we are surrounded by spirits that have the same level of evolution that we are, to deal with our imperfections and our challenges. Then it is here when we are surrounded by spirits that are at different levels of evolution and that are testing our evolution at all times, right? So you think of, going back to the spiritual world, you think of André Luiz and his evolution, because we followed him so closely. We know that his learning and his evolution. He's going there to the lower zones. He's going to the caverns. He's going to come into Earth. But working here, he's working from the spiritual point of view. He's not getting personally involved in the challenges of being incarnated, right? When he sees in the Nosso when he sees his wife remarried and with his new husband struggling with a disease, struggling to survive, and he helps and ends up, first reaction is anger, but eventually he helps, right? Again, from the spiritual world, we can do a lot of work, but it's easier. It is less challenging than doing it from here when we are incarnated. Okay. And then, it compares with the wine, the purification, our different incarnations, different distillations. It's a valid comparison, interesting one. But it's, we're more of what we were discussing before, okay? Comments, questions here? We're not going to move forward to the next item because the next is fate of children after death, which is a very interesting subject. And I think it's a subject worth, it's a small one, but it's worth focusing on it and not rush through it in 8 minutes that we have. So let us talk a little bit more in this 8 minutes that we have here left. Elmo, something to add here?
No, really, I think the question, if the body influences the spirit.
Elmo, we can barely hear you.
Better now?
I think it's better, yeah, a little better.
Yeah, I think the question of if the body influences the spirit, it's a very interesting one. I mean, it's asking if the part that lacks the intelligence can influence the part that carries the intelligence, right? So it has to be the other way around. The spirit influences the body. Now, the body or the quality of the body will have an effect on the spirit, and that's why we are born with different kind of body, because that body is suited for the spirit to go to necessary experience. But if the law of progress, as the spirit puts over here, you would expect that as the spirits evolve, it will produce a better spirit that in turn, since the better spirit is the mold that molds the physical body, that the better spirit will mold more refined bodies as well. That's why we spiritists would imagine that the physical body of the spirit of us in higher places of existence will not be the same as the one that we have here. It will be different, because as the spirit evolves, we will produce, the perispirit will also evolve, and we will produce more evolved physical body also. What that means, also, only when we get there, we will be able to figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah, here, something that says here, your spirit is everything, your body is nothing but a decaying envelope, that is all. And I think that's, a simplification from the spirit, but to send a message that our focus is our spiritual evolution, that our physical body, it's an excellent instrument of work that we need to take care very much, because it's what allows us to work on our moral and intellectual progress, but it doesn't influence the spirit. It's the other way around, right? Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so I'll stop here. 5 minutes early, but not a problem. So this Saturday, we have a talk with Sabrina Tomaszewski from Florida. She's an active member of Peace and Knowledge Spiritist Center of Orlando. And she's going to talk about facing struggles, which is a very appropriate theme for the days we're living in, right? She's a researcher on the mechanisms of and benefits of spiritist art and magnetism. Okay, so this Saturday, 11 a.m., you're all invited. This Sunday, we're going to study On the Way to the Light, I believe we are in chapter 24. I wasn't here last month, but I'll make sure we start from the point where you guys stopped. And the following Sunday, we will have our friend Luis Leon doing a lecture for us. He's going to send us this weekend what he's going to talk about. So we'll inform you through the email on Monday and next Thursday. Okay. So Carol, can I do our final prayer?
Sure. Thank you, John Elmo. Infinite Creator, Supreme Intelligence, we are grateful this evening to be together again for our study of the Spirits book. We are grateful now to go through the chapter 4, Progressive Transmigration. So we know that we use our intelligence, which gradually develops. We come from more of an instinctive state. It is not permanent, however. We grow, we move, and as we do, we gain responsibility. As a spirit, we have started at a beginning point, but no end point. However, there will be at some junction perfection of our spirit, which we are still unable to completely comprehend. We progress through many corporeal lives and we acquire experience and knowledge. There is both moral and intellectual development, a balance of however is needed. Humility is a sign of our evolution, so we try to incorporate that as we gain our responsibilities in life. Our spirit is always progressing and never regresses. And each spirit is responsible for their own progress. So we really indeed have to make an effort on the individual level. We are grateful this evening to our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, the mentors, those who are with us, assisting us, guiding us, inspiring us for our evolution. We are never alone. There is always assistance as we do our part and as we reach out and ask. We do need to be active, certainly proactive in our life, for we know that when we have incarnated here or elsewhere, the journey is where we benefit from the challenges that we undertake. May we continue throughout the week with our prayers, with our studies, and with our mindfulness. May we also incorporate humility. May we do good. May we think good. May we act good in our circumstances. We give thanks and may we humbly ask for the love and light of Christ to be within us, to guide us each and every day, each and every night. We are truly blessed for all that we have received and that we will continue to receive as we do our part. And may we continue now and humbly ask to go forth as beacons of light, going forth to family, friends, loved ones, and perhaps co-workers as well. May they be included in our good wishes, our prayers, and our everyday interactions. We close now as beacons of light, go forth now in peace and in gratitude, so be it.